A major ruling against both P. Diddy and Jay-Z, as a judge rules a rape accuser can remain anonymous, at least for now. And the judge gets spicy in her ruling too, calling out Jay-Z's attorney for filing what she says is a litany of motions.
The empire they spent decades building is collapsing right before our eyes. Diddy and Jay-Z, two men who once stood at the very top of the music industry, are now watching everything they created fall apart under the weight of dark.
Sean Combs, P. Diddy, has been living at the Metropolitan Detention Center for the past 3 months now. That's because he faces federal charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in prostitution. But Diddy's fall from grace came far before his September arrest, but rather last November, when the first civil suit against him was filed alleging sexual abuse. Since then, there have been almost too many civil lawsuits to keep up with, and another high-profile name has recently made its way into a filing: Jay-Z. Sean Carter, Beyonce's husband, whatever you know him as, is now accused of raping a 13-year-old girl at one of P. Diddy's parties. We reported on this specific lawsuit back when it was filed in October, but here's a quick refresher. The woman who filed this civil suit is listed only as Jane Doe. She hasn't revealed her true identity and doesn't have to, at least for now, but more on that later. Now, Jane Doe says she met Diddy's limo driver outside the MTV Video Music Awards in September 2000. He told her, quote, Combs liked younger girls and said she'll fit what Diddy was looking for, not allowing her into the awards, but inviting her to an after party. Later that night, the driver brought her to a large white house that was behind a gated fence, and inside, she saw multiple celebrities she recognized, and of course, P. Diddy. According to her suit, once inside, 2 men asked plaintiff, that's Jane Doe, to sign a non-disclosure agreement, informing her that she could not discuss what happened at the party. She gave them her name and signed the form, but did not receive a copy. Eventually, Jane Doe accepted a drink at this party. She says it was a reddish-yellow mixture and tasted like orange juice, cranberry juice, and something else bitter mixed in. Jane Doe now believes Diddy or one of his associates slipped something into her drink. After all of this, Jane Doe had some of the drink. She says she started feeling woozy and wanted to lie down. So she went into what she thought was an empty room but did not lock the door. The next part is a direct quote from Jane Doe's lawsuit, and it's pretty disturbing. Quote, soon after, Combs, along with a male and female celebrity, entered the room. Combs A was a man and Celeb B was a woman. There had been rumblings that Celebrity B is actually Jennifer Lopez, who was Diddy's girlfriend at the time, but that has not been confirmed. What has been confirmed, though, at least according to Jane Doe, is that Celebrity A is Jay-Z. In December, Jane Doe amended her lawsuit to publicly name Jay-Z, alleging he raped her that night. And again, reminder, she's only 13 at the time. Jay-Z completely denies these allegations. He's made a motion earlier this month even for Jane Doe to reveal her identity. And that's not the first time we've seen this tactic, and the last time it actually worked. We reported on this too. The original Jane Doe, who filed civil suit against Diddy in late 2023, the one who included pictures in her lawsuit, was just recently ordered to reveal her name publicly. And that's when we learned that Jane Doe is actually Anna Kane. She's known mostly as the ex-wife of hockey player Evander Kane. So following this same pattern, Jay-Z's team filed a motion demanding Jane Doe make her name public. Here's what his team wrote. Admissions by the plaintiff, meaning Jane Doe, and damning admissions by her own father in a December 13 revelatory NBC interview cast yet further doubt on a claim that was obviously false from the start. The timeline, location, and occurrence of events alleged in plaintiff's complaint are rendered impossible by these admissions. She claims her father picked her up after the assault, and this next part they mean to write, he took a 5-hour trip. She claims she spoke with musician Benji Madden that night.
Disturbing secrets that are finally being dragged into the light. The truth that's coming out isn't just shocking, it's devastating, because it doesn't just expose them, it tears apart the entire myth of what their empire was built on. For years, Diddy and Jay-Z were untouchable. They weren't just rappers, they were institutions. They shaped culture, defined success, and turned hip-hop into a billion-dollar machine. They played kings, sitting on thrones made of fame, money, and power, but power like that doesn't come without cost. And now, the skeletons they buried long ago are clawing their way out. What's coming out about their pasts is darker than anyone expected, and it's starting to destroy everything they worked for. Sources close to the situation are saying this collapse didn't happen overnight. It's been brewing for years. Behind the scenes, both men were fighting off lawsuits, investigations, and whispers from former associates who knew too much. For a long time, they managed to keep it buried, silencing people.
He was not even in New York. She claims the assault took place at an after-party hosted in a private residence. Photos show Mr. Carter at an after-party at a nightclub. When pressed by NBC, plaintiff was forced to admit, "I've made some mistakes. I may have made a mistake in identifying. Not all faces there are as clear," and even that she was guessing about key details, including the time it took to reach the venue. What is more, she admits she does not have a single corroborating witness over the last 24 years. In this motion, Jay-Z's team calls for an immediate preservation order, suggesting that Tony Buzbee, Jane Doe's attorney, could destroy key evidence in the case. The filing even says there's a substantial risk that this may happen. So Jay-Z wants this preservation order, but if not that, he wants the lawsuit completely thrown out and dismissed. But the judge wasn't going for it. This is the spicy part of the motion we mentioned earlier. To start, she broke down the criteria for keeping a plaintiff's name out of a lawsuit, saying there are several key factors in play in Jane Doe's case. One, whether the litigation involves matters that are highly sensitive and of a personal nature. Two, whether identification poses a risk of retaliatory physical or mental harm to the party seeking to proceed anonymously, or even more critically, to innocent non-parties. Another risk, whether the plaintiff is particularly vulnerable to the possible harms of disclosure, particularly in light of her age, and whether the plaintiff's identity has thus far been kept confidential. Now, the motion lays out the pros and cons of keeping Jane Doe's name quiet. The judge notes, most importantly, plaintiff's continued anonymity may cause prejudice to defendants, making it more difficult for them to collect the facts necessary to mount a defense and, as appropriate, challenge plaintiff's credibility. But she says, nevertheless, at this exceedingly early stage in this case, the factors counseling against disclosure outweigh those that counsel in favor. So the judge granted Jane Doe's motion to remain anonymous, at least for now. She does note, though, that the court intends to revisit this decision at a future date. After all this, the judge addresses Jay-Z's prior motion and basically calls out his defense team. She says they have, quote, submitted a litany of letters and motions attempting to impugn the character of plaintiff's lawyer, many of them expounding on the purported urgency of this case. This next part is extra fiery. Quote, Carter's lawyers' relentless filing of combative motions containing inflammatory language and ad hominem attacks is inappropriate, a waste of judicial resources and a tactic unlikely to benefit his clients. The court will not fast-track the judicial process merely because counsel demands it. So we've gone through the motion and the ruling on paper, but what does all of that really mean? So we're joined now by criminal defense attorney Adam Conta to take a closer look at the judge's ruling. Now, Adam, is this a win for Jane Doe, do you think, to remain anonymous?
Yeah, it's a win for Jane Doe, certainly, but it's like a short win. It's really much more of a loss for the legal team of Jay-Z and Diddy.
Why would you say that? Because the judge was kind of harsh to Jay-Z and Diddy in her response?
Yeah, this is sort of like, if a child asks you for something and you're trying to teach them a lesson, you say, no, not right now. Go be good for a little while, then come back and ask me again. That is almost exactly what Judge Annalisa Torres did here. She wanted to send a message to
paying settlements, controlling narratives, but the truth has a way of leaking out, and now it's unstoppable. It all started when documents began circulating, papers that allegedly connect both Diddy and Jay-Z to years of shady dealings and secret arrangements. Some of it sounds almost unbelievable: secret business partnerships that moved millions through offshore accounts, questionable relationships with politicians and executives, and stories of people being forced into silence after getting too close to the truth. People who were once in their inner circles are now talking. Former employees, producers, artists, all saying the same thing: that the empire was built on manipulation, intimidation, and control. That behind every hit song and record deal, there was a darker exchange happening, and that both Diddy and Jay-Z were at the center of it all. There's even talk that what's happening right now isn't just about greed or corruption, it's about a culture of secrecy that protected these men for decades. And now that protection is gone, the media isn't shielding them anymore. The fans aren't defending them the same way. The illusion is breaking.
directly to Alex Spiro, who is obviously one of the most prolific attorneys in the country right now. I've known him for 20 years. He started as a DA in Manhattan. I knew him as a DA in Manhattan. I had cases against him as a DA in Manhattan. And he's gone on to do incredible things. But he has a very specific style. And there's a lot of people who don't like that style. And Judge Torres is one of them. He's now twice kind of taken the reins and tried to take control of the narrative of cases by putting on sort of these preemptive press conferences. He did it with Mayor Adams, and he did it now with Jay-Z, where he goes to the press and essentially puts on a PowerPoint and says, hey, this is why I think this case is garbage. This is all the inconsistencies. This is where this case fails. But it's obviously from his point of view. And so the judge doesn't like that. The other side of that, especially as for me as a defense attorney, is, well, that's what the DAs do every time they make a big arrest. That's what the federal prosecutors do every time they make a big arrest. They go in front of the camera and they put on this sort of dog and pony show press conference to like tell the nation why this is such a just arrest, why this is such a just prosecution, and to try to get public opinion behind them as they move forward in the case. It's really Alex Spiro doing the exact opposite thing to help his client, but the judge really didn't like it. And so all of that is to say that this ruling to me is specifically directed at Alex Spiro saying, I don't like what you're doing. I don't like all the motions you're filing. I don't like how you're going about handling this case. And if you continue to do it, you're not the only one who's got some tricks up their sleeve. I can also do things to make this process more difficult.
Yeah, the second half of this motion was kind of crazy. She really called him out. I thought it was really interesting to go through the motion and read it. And it sounds like it was a major tactic on his side to do these press conferences, as you said, file these motions. So if he doesn't stop doing that and just continues bombarding her with all of these motions, what sort of response could the judge have?
If I'm being honest, not much. The federal court system has a lot of power, and the judges there have a lot of power, and they demand a level of respect that sometimes judges in state court don't demand. And I say respect, actually, it's more formality. They demand a formality in the process. And so they can do these things and they can make your life very difficult, but they don't have a lot of leverage, especially over someone like Alex Spiro, who works at a private firm. The judges can't stop him from continuing to bring in a stream of business. And the reality is that even though this victim's name has been continued to be made anonymous for the public for now, that just cannot continue. Because what the judge is doing currently is balancing the public's need for information and the defense's need for information so they can prepare for trial versus the effect that this will have on the alleged victim and her psyche. And obviously the world knows that as soon as her name is revealed, everyone is going to come down on her, from the media to his attorneys to the social media. You're going to get it from all sides. And so she's doing this victim, the alleged victim, a favor right now by keeping her anonymous, but it's just not practical. So if he keeps doing this, getting back to your question, if he keeps filing these motions, if he keeps making the process difficult, she could sanction him, but she would really have to prove that his motions were not just frivolous, but almost malicious. But ultimately, she's going to have to sign off on revealing the identity of this alleged victim. And there's nothing that's going to stop that from happening if this case continues to move forward.
Let's talk about how bad things have gotten for Diddy first. His name has been tied to multiple lawsuits, raids, and accusations that have completely destroyed his image. The man who once bragged about living larger than life is now facing one of the biggest falls from grace in music history. What's worse is that his so-called friends, the same ones who used to party with him, take his money, and benefit from his power, are all disappearing. And then there's Jay-Z. For the longest time, he was seen as the one who made it out clean, the calculated businessman who turned rap into a corporate empire. But the new leaks are starting to paint a much darker picture. According to insiders, Jay-Z wasn't just watching Diddy's empire burn, he might have been part of the same system that enabled all of this. There are allegations surfacing that he helped cover up shady deals, that he was part of backdoor negotiations, and that his clean image might have been one of the biggest PR tricks the industry ever pulled. The tension between them is reportedly boiling. People close to both camps say there's no trust left, that what used to be brotherhood is now betrayal. They're both scrambling to protect themselves, throwing each other under the bus in private conversations, and preparing for whatever's coming next. But what's really striking is how fast their world is falling apart. Endorsements gone.
But I guess what I'll say is just a lighter moment in what is a very, very serious and deeply disturbing set of allegations. Now, while that wasn't really specific what to make of that reaction, I will say who did get into specifics. Charlemagne. So he hosts The Breakfast Club, and he says the following: "Good for Hove. I'm glad Jay-Z responded just like that because this has been going on for too long. It is a grift. These accusers go to these lawyers with all these salacious claims. The lawyer will put more sauce on the salacious claims. They reach out to your team, say, if you don't settle with us, we're going to go public with these claims. They'll tell you they're going to hold a press conference. We're going to do interviews. And a lot of people settle because they don't want the bad press. And most people settle. You'd be surprised how many people settle. The court of public opinion makes everybody guilty, so it makes a lot of people settle." And Hove said, "Kiss my A, I'm not settling, and I don't blame him." And then he went on to say, "At some point, this litigious blackmailing and extortion has to stop." And he also added, what you hear is this, right? You hear the initial accusation, but you don't ever see when the case gets dropped. You don't see when the case actually gets dismissed. That is a really interesting reaction. I mean, seemingly, he's not believing Jane Doe's claims, or Tony Busby, at least as of now. And seemingly, he is praising Jay-Z and his lawyers' aggressive strategy. We've talked about this before. Jay-Z knew this lawsuit was going to be filed. He had that response prepared. He and his attorney have been actively fighting since this case got filed to get the case dismissed. And they've been arguing that Jane Doe should have to reveal herself. And to not do so is procedurally improper. They have even said the case should be thrown out. They've gone on the offensive, calling Busby's actions extortion and blackmail, criticizing him for sending a demand letter prior to him being named in the lawsuit. And apparently Jay-Z filed his own lawsuit against Tony Busby, accusing him of extortion and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Now, some would say that Busby didn't do anything wrong, that a demand letter is very standard practice. You send the demand letter to try to settle the case or go to mediation. That is standard practice. But if Jay-Z is saying these claims against him are false, and this was just an attempt to settle so he wouldn't be exposed, this isn't right, he says, and he's fighting it. I will say it'll be interesting to see if more lawsuits come out against Jay-Z, because I will say in his lawsuit against Tony Busby, he seems to indicate that Busby has accused him of misconduct, not just with respect to this Jane Doe, but at least one other person. And if he gets hit with more lawsuits, lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, more allegations, things could change. Public perception could change. And you have to think about what happened with Sean Combs, right? He settles with Cassandra Ventura in her sexual assault lawsuit back in November of 2023, but the day after she files it, after we've all seen the allegations of rape, domestic violence, sex trafficking, then he settles. So what happens? The floodgates open. Combs is hit with lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit. He was just hit with 3 more lawsuits being brought by unidentified men. And it sure didn't help him that the 2016 video of him purportedly beating Cassandra Ventura in a hotel hallway was released by CNN because it gave more validity to the claims against him. And look, there are those who are praising Jay-Z's strategy.
Business partners walking away, major streaming platforms quietly distancing themselves. Even people who used to idolize them are questioning everything. Social media is a war zone, fans digging up old interviews, old lyrics, and old photos that suddenly look different now. Every move they ever made is being re-examined under a harsher light. And it's not just about business, it's about morality, about how much darkness was hidden behind the success. Because the stories that are coming out don't just describe bad business, they describe exploitation, abuse of power, and lives ruined in the process of making these 2 men legends. Some insiders are calling this the end of the hip-hop billionaire era. The idea that these moguls were symbols of hope, of success, of making it out, that illusion is dying. The empire is rotting from the inside out. Behind closed doors, both camps are reportedly panicking. Diddy's team is focused on survival, trying to manage the legal chaos and media backlash. Jay-Z's team, on the other hand, is doing everything they
Alex Spiro writes in this filing. It's important because he writes, the nature of the allegations here warrant sanctions. This is not a contract dispute or a patent case. This is an allegation of child rape. To sign a pleading accusing someone of such a horrific crime without adequately vetting the allegation, particularly when the defendant's prominence means that the allegation will be repeated in headlines across the world, is deeply wrong and unethical. If lawyers do not face consequences for such a cavalier effort to destroy another person's reputation and inflict emotional harm on his loved ones, that tactic will proliferate. And at the same time, Combs has also been accused in several civil lawsuits of drugging and raping people as far back as the 90s. The allegations come from both men and women, including some who say that they were just teens when they were targeted. And in the midst of a flurry of lawsuits, before he faced criminal charges in federal court, we learned about a man named Derek Cardello Smith. This is an inmate incarcerated at Ernest C. Brooks Correctional Facility out in Michigan. Now, he has been convicted multiple times for criminal sexual conduct and kidnapping. Cardello Smith appeared on a judge's live stream from prison representing himself to explain why he wanted an injunction against, out of all people, Sean Combs.
This is in the matter of Derek Lee Cardello Smith, MDOC number 267009 versus Sean Combs, Sean Puff Daddy Combs, also known as Sean P. Diddy, also known as Diddy, Bad Boy Records label owner, founder, also known as Puff P. Daddy, Bad Boy, Diddy Run the City, Sean Combs, also known as Sean Puffy Combs. And this is file number 24-7362NO. I'll grab your paperwork here real quick out of this other paperwork. We do have Mr. Cardello Smith appearing from the Michigan Department of Corrections. Sir, where are you currently located?
I'm located at the Ernest C. Brooks Correctional Facility, 2500 South Sheridan Drive, Muskegon, Michigan, 49444, ma'am.
All right, thank you, sir.
Or Your Honor.
Thank you. So I do see that we do have a proof of service on Mr. Combs. But for purposes of this hearing, you filed a motion for a temporary restraining order and or a preliminary injunction to stop all sales of the property and assets attached to or involved with said property based on the interest of plaintiff and plaintiff's connections to defendant's sexual assault of plaintiff Derek Lee Cardello Smith, requiring a preliminary injunction and or a temporary restraining order. Do you wish to argue the motion today, sir?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed then.
Okay, the purpose of it is based on two actions taken by Mr. Combs himself, directly with me here. We did a live one-on-one visit in our prison visiting room. There's two meetings within the past 2 weeks with Mr. Combs on one meeting, and then a financial advisor on the other meeting on Mr. Combs' behalf. And he stated that he would make me an offer to end the case and what happened to me because of other things that he
can to contain the fallout, staying quiet, avoiding statements, and hoping the spotlight doesn't shift directly onto him. But the damage is done. Once the world starts connecting the dots, silence looks like guilt. Even other artists who once saw them as role models are backing away. You can feel the fear across the industry, people deleting old posts, refusing to comment, pretending they were never close. Nobody wants to go down with them. This entire situation is forcing people to ask hard questions. Was this empire ever really about music? Or was it just about power? Did they uplift the culture? Or did they use it as a shield to build something much darker behind the scenes? The truth is, the empire was built on control. Control over artists, over money, over perception. And now that control is gone, the entire foundation is cracking. What we're seeing isn't just a scandal, it's a complete collapse of an illusion. There's also a deeper irony here. For years, Diddy and Jay-Z told everyone to own your masters, to build your empire, to stay independent. But now, it looks like they were the ones pulling the strings the whole time, turning independence into another form of control. The ones who claim to free artists may have been trapping them all along. Social media is in chaos. Fans are split between disbelief and anger. Some are saying, we always knew there was something off about the way they moved. Others can't accept that the men who shaped hip-hop culture could have been part of something this disturbing. Even major artists who once looked up to them are reportedly backing away. Nobody wants to be associated with what's now being called the Empire of Secrets. And if you think this ends here, it doesn't. More insiders are stepping forward every week, hinting that what's been revealed so far is only scratching the surface. There are allegedly recordings, emails, and even financial trails that could tie everything together. People are starting to talk about how the entertainment industry itself enabled this, how the system protects its powerful figures while crushing everyone else who dares to speak. Some even believe what's coming could bring down more big names who were connected to both Diddy and Jay-Z's inner circles. People are saying this might go even further, that the leaks are just the beginning, and federal investigations could soon follow. If that happens, this won't just be a PR disaster, it'll be a complete dismantling of everything they ever built. And maybe that's the real story here, the fall of the untouchables, the moment when power finally met accountability, because no matter how much money, fame, or influence you have, the truth always finds its way to the surface. The dark truth behind Diddy and Jay-Z's empire isn't just about them, it's about the culture that allowed them to rise without consequences. It's about an industry that looked the other way while they played kings. But now, the crown is slipping, the empire is crumbling, and the truth they thought would stay buried forever, is out. The empire that once defined hip-hop's power has finally met its breaking point. The lies, the manipulation, the darkness, it's all coming undone. And as it falls apart, one thing is clear, this isn't just the end of Diddy and Jay-Z's reign. This is the end of an era,